She thought she was just serving meals, till her quiet kindness to a mute boy brought helicopters to her doorstep and changed both their lives forever. In a small, quiet town, there was a little diner that was known to many, but special to only a few. It was a simple place with checkered tablecloths, wooden chairs, and the smell of fresh coffee and warm pancakes filling the air every morning. This diner was where a young woman worked as a waitress.
Oh,
She wasn't rich, and she didn't have a big family or a fancy life. But she had something rare and beautiful, a heart full of kindness. Her name was Mary. Mary came from a family that had always taught her to care for others. Her parents were simple people, and they raised her with the belief that even small acts of kindness could make a big difference. Mary's life was not easy. She worked long hours every day, sometimes starting early in the morning and finishing late at night. She didn't complain. Instead, she smiled at every customer who walked in, even if she was tired. She loved her job because she got to meet so many different people, and she liked to make their day a little better with her warm smile and polite words. Every day. Mary noticed something unusual. There was a young boy who came to the diner almost every afternoon. Just after school, he was small for his age, and he never said a word. No one really knew his name because he never spoke. He simply sat quietly at a corner table, his eyes looking around but never meeting anyone's gaze directly. Sometimes he would look at the food on the tables, but he never asked for anything. He was mute. He couldn't speak. The people in the diner barely noticed him because he was so quiet and kept to himself. Mary saw the boy and felt a strange pull at her heart. She noticed how thin he was, how his clothes looked old and worn, and how he seemed lonely, sitting by himself every day. She understood that the boy might be hungry, but he never asked for food or help. Mary thought about her own childhood and how lucky she was to have family and warmth. She wondered what the boy's life was like, one cold afternoon after serving. Many customers, Mary went into the kitchen and looked at the boy through the window. She saw his shoulders were slumped, and his face looked tired. Her heart whispered to her that she needed to do something. So, without making a scene or drawing attention to herself, Mary quietly took some extra food and put it on a small plate. She carefully placed the plate near the boy's table when he was not looking. The boy noticed the food and slowly began to eat. At first he was cautious, but the food was warm and delicious. Mary watched from a distance, feeling happy that she could help in this small way. Day after day, she did the same. She set aside extra portions just for him. Some soup, bread, sometimes a piece of pie. She never said anything, and she never expected anything in return. This became their quiet routine. The boy began to come to the diner, not just because he needed food, but because he felt safe there. Mary's gentle presence was comforting. Even though he couldn't speak, their connection was strong. She sometimes left little notes beside his plate with simple words like "You are safe here," or "You are not alone." The boy treasured these notes and looked forward to them every day. This silent friendship was special. No one else in the diner noticed what was happening because Mary was careful to keep it quiet. She didn't want to embarrass the boy or make him feel different. She only wanted him to feel cared for, even if only in a small way. The boy's eyes, once sad and empty, slowly began to show signs of hope. Sometimes he looked at Mary with a soft smile, a smile that spoke more than words ever could. Mary's kindness didn't stop at feeding him. Sometimes when she had a little extra money, she bought small gifts, a pencil, a notebook, or a small toy. She would quietly leave them on his table. The boy treasured these gifts and kept them close. They were signs that someone cared. Life in the diner went on. The regular customers came and went, chatting about their daily lives, and Mary continued to serve them with her warm smile. But behind the scenes, there was this quiet story unfolding, a story of compassion between a waitress and a mute boy who had no voice but whose heart spoke volumes. One day, an old man who was a regular at the diner noticed the boy sitting quietly with his food. The man was curious and asked Mary about him. Mary just smiled and said, "He's a special little boy. He doesn't speak, but he's very brave." The man nodded thoughtfully, touched by the silent care Mary showed. The boy's life outside the diner was hard. Mary learned from a neighbor that the boy lived with his mother, who was very sick and unable to care for him properly. There was no one else to look after him, and the boy had learned to be quiet to avoid trouble. Mary felt a deep sadness for him, but also a strong determination to keep helping him, even if only in small ways. Each day, as the sun set and the diner closed, Mary would think about the boy and hope that one day things would get better for him. She dreamed that he would find a safe place to live and people who would love him like he deserved. Their story was just beginning. A quiet story of two souls connecting in a world that often overlooked those who could not speak. Mary's small acts of kindness were making a difference. Not just by feeding the boy's body, but by feeding his spirit, in a town that was sometimes too busy to notice. This quiet friendship blossomed, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones told without words. And Mary knew deep in her heart that this was only the start of something important. After many days of quietly watching over the mute boy, Mary's care for him grew stronger. She had formed a special connection with the boy, even though neither of them spoke to each other in words. Their silent understanding was powerful. Began to feel a deeper responsibility for his well-being. She wanted to know more about him, about his life outside the diner, about what made him so quiet. One afternoon, after finishing her shift, Mary decided to ask around the neighborhood near the diner. She hoped to learn something that would help her understand the boy's world better. The town was small, so people usually knew each other's stories. She spoke gently with Mrs. Alvarez, an elderly woman who lived a few houses down from the diner. Mrs. Alvarez had lived in the town all her life and was known as a kind, caring person who looked after many children. Mary found Mrs. Alvarez sitting on her porch, knitting a scarf. She smiled warmly when Mary approached and asked about the boy. Mrs. Alvarez sighed and explained, "That boy's mother is very sick. She can barely take care of him. They live alone in a small, old house on the edge of town. The boy doesn't have many friends because he's quiet and different. People don't always understand him." Mary listened carefully. Her heart ached for the boy and his mother. She imagined how hard life must be for both of them. Mrs. Alvarez continued, "The boy doesn't speak because he was born with a condition that makes it difficult for him to talk. It's hard for him to communicate, but he understands everything. Around him, his mother does what she can, but she's weak and often bedridden." Hearing this made Mary want to do even more. She realized the boy's silence was not just shyness. It was a part of his life that shaped everything he did. But Mary also knew that the boy's silence did not mean he was invisible or unimportant. She was determined to show him kindness. In every way she could, over the next few weeks, Mary became more thoughtful about how she could help. Besides feeding him, she wanted to give the boy something to brighten his days and encourage him to express himself. One day, Mary brought a small notebook and some crayons to the diner. She carefully placed them on the boy's table when he wasn't looking. When the boy saw the notebook and crayons, his eyes widened with surprise. Slowly, he picked up a crayon and began to draw. At first, his strokes were uncertain, but as the days passed, he became more confident. The drawings were simple but beautiful pictures of the sun, trees, and sometimes a small house that looked like the one he lived in. Mary smiled every time she saw the boy drawing. She understood that art was his way of speaking. Without words, he could share his thoughts and feelings through colors and shapes. She often sat nearby, watching quietly, making sure he felt safe. The diner's regular customers started to notice the boy's presence more. Some were curious, others touched by the silent bond between Mary and the boy. Mr. Thompson, a kindly man who came in every morning for coffee, once asked Mary, "That boy comes here every day, but he never talks. Do you know his story?" Nodded gently and told Mr. Thompson a little about the boy's mother's illness and the boy's condition. She explained how the boy couldn't speak, but that didn't mean he couldn't feel or understand. Mr. Thompson listened thoughtfully and said, "You have a big heart, Mary. It's beautiful what you're doing." Mary blushed but felt proud inside. She was happy that people were starting to care, even quietly. She hoped that someday the community would come together to help the boy and his mother. The boy's health began to improve slowly, thanks to the extra food and the care he received at the diner. Mary noticed that his cheeks were less pale, and that he looked less tired. The light in his eyes grew brighter, and sometimes, when Mary spoke to him with a smile, he responded with a soft nod or a shy smile. Those small moments filled Mary with hope. One afternoon, Mary brought a little gift for the boy, a soft teddy bear she had bought from a second-hand store. She placed it gently on his table. The boy's face lit up when he saw it. He reached out and hugged the bear tightly. For the first time, Mary saw tears in his eyes. They were tears not of sadness, but of joy and comfort. Mary realized that the boy had lived without such simple joys for a long time. She wanted to give him more than just food. She wanted to give him hope, love, and a sense of belonging. Boy's routine changed a little, but his spirit was growing stronger. Mary found herself thinking about him often, worrying about how things were at home. She wished she could do more to help his mother too. Mary considered talking to social workers or local charities, but wasn't sure if it was her place to intervene. One day, a social worker named Ms. Patel came to the diner. Mary met her when she was serving coffee to a few customers. Ms. Patel explained that she worked with children in difficult situations and had heard about the boy from neighbors. Mary felt relieved to talk to someone who might be able to help the boy and his mother. Mary told Ms. Patel everything she knew about the boy's muteness, his mother's illness, and how the boy came to the diner every day. Ms. Patel thanked Mary for her care and promised to visit the boy's home soon. After Ms. Patel's visit, Mary felt a mix of emotions. She was hopeful that help was coming, but also anxious about what might happen. She wondered if the boy would have to leave the diner, or if things would change too quickly for him to understand. Despite these worries, Mary continued her quiet support. She kept feeding the boy, leaving notes, and bringing small gifts. The boy's trust in her grew. She treasured the moments they shared, moments without words but filled with meaning. The community around the diner began to change too. People who once ignored the boy started to smile at him or nod in recognition. They saw Mary's kindness and realized the importance of caring for those who might be invisible to others. Mary's actions inspired others. Some customers began to donate food or toys to the diner, asking Mary to give them to the boy or other children in need. The diner became a small beacon of hope, a place where kindness quietly grew. The boy's life was still full of challenges, but with Mary's support and the interest of people like Ms. Patel, there was a growing sense that things could improve. The boy learned that even without words, he could be seen and loved. Mary often thought about the future, what it might hold for the boy and his mother. She dreamed of a day when the boy could live in a safe home, attend school with friends, and smile without fear. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she believed that kindness, no matter how small, could make a difference. The quiet moments they shared in the diner were precious. Mary understood that sometimes love doesn't need words to be real. It lives in actions, in the simple act of feeding a hungry child, offering a comforting smile, and believing in someone's worth as days turned into weeks. The boy's drawings grew more detailed. Mary kept every picture he made, placing them carefully in a small folder. Each drawing was a story, stories of hope, of dreams, and of a world where the boy was not alone. One evening, after closing the diner, Mary sat alone and thought about the boy's future. She felt a deep connection to him, as if their lives were tied together by fate. She promised herself she would keep helping him no matter what. This was not just a story of a waitress and a mute boy. It was a story of quiet courage, of kindness shining in the darkest places, and of two souls finding comfort in each other when words were not enough. The boy's journey was still unfolding, but Mary's heart was full of hope. And in that hope, they both found strength to face whatever came next. Days passed quietly in the small town, but the stillness was about to break in a way no one expected. Mary, the kind waitress, continued her gentle care for the mute boy who came to the diner every day. Their silent friendship had grown stronger, and Mary had become a quiet protector, watching over him like a guardian angel. But on this particular day, something different happened, something that would change their lives forever. That afternoon, Mary noticed the boy did not arrive at the diner as he usually did. At first, she thought he might be late or busy with something. But as the minutes turned to hours and the diner began to empty, the boy was still nowhere to be seen. Mary's heart began to worry. She felt an unusual emptiness, like a small part of her day was missing. The boy's absence was loud in its silence. Mary glanced at the door every few moments, hoping to see the boy's shy figure step inside. But the door remained closed. She wondered if something bad had happened to him or his mother. Her mind raced with all kinds of fears. Was he sick? Was he in trouble? Had someone taken him away? The questions filled her thoughts, but she had no answers. As Mary cleaned the tables and finished her work, a sudden loud noise disturbed the quiet town. The distant sound of helicopter blades spinning fast echoed through the sky. Mary looked up, confused and curious. Helicopters were not common in their small town. She watched as 2 helicopters hovered near the diner, their loud engines stirring up dust and leaves. People started to gather outside, eyes wide with surprise and concern. Mary's heart pounded. She didn't know what was happening, but she felt it was connected to the boy. The small crowd whispered nervously as a group of people in uniforms arrives, social workers, police officers, and a few medical personnel. They moved quickly but calmly toward the diner and then toward the boy's home nearby. Mary stepped outside, her eyes searching the crowd, hoping to find someone who could explain. A woman in a uniform approached her and introduced herself as Ms. Patel. The social worker Mary had met a few weeks before. Ms. Patel's face was serious but kind. "We came to make sure the boy is safe," Ms. Patel said softly. "There have been reports that his home situation is dangerous, and we had to act quickly." Mary felt a mix of emotions, relief that help had finally arrived, fear for what the boy might have gone through, and sadness because this meant the boy might be taken away from the diner. From her, Miss Patel gently told Mary that the boy was being taken into protective custody. His mother's illness had worsened, and she was unable to care for him properly anymore. The authorities had no choice but to step in and find a safer place for the boy. Mary nodded, tears in her eyes, understanding that this was for the boy's own good. The boy was found safe and unharmed. When the social workers reached his home, they saw the difficult conditions the boy and his mother were living in. The house was small, with broken windows and little furniture. The air was heavy with sickness, and it was clear the mother could not care for her child properly. The boy was scared but calm when the workers arrived. Mary watched as the boy was gently helped into a van that would take him to a temporary care center. She felt her heart breaking but also swelling with hope. She hoped that this change would bring the boy the safety and love he deserved. As the helicopters lifted off into the sky, Mary stood silently, watching them disappear over the town. The diner felt emptier without the boy's quiet presence. Mary realized that her small acts of kindness had made a difference in his life, but now, bigger changes were happening. The news of the boy's rescue spread quickly through the town. People who had never noticed the boy before now talked about his story. The waitress who had quietly fed him every day became a symbol of compassion in the community. Some neighbors came to Mary, thanking her for caring so deeply for the boy and encouraging others to help vulnerable children. Mary received calls and visits from local reporters who wanted to tell the story of the mute boy and the waitress who had quietly changed his life. At first, Mary was shy and uncomfortable with the attention. She never sought recognition. Her kindness had been simple and private, but she understood that sharing the story might inspire others to look out for those who could not speak for themselves. Meanwhile, the boy was placed in a temporary foster home where he was safe and cared for. The foster parents were patient and gentle, learning to communicate with the boy in ways he could understand. They used pictures, drawings, and signs to help him express his thoughts. Slowly, the boy began to feel comfortable again. At the care center, the boy started seeing a speech therapist and a counselor. They worked with him every day, helping him find ways to connect with others. The boy was shy and cautious at first, but the love and patience he received helped him open up. Little by little, Mary visited the boy once, bringing his favorite teddy bear and some of his drawings. The boy's face lit up when he saw her, and he hugged her tightly. Although he still could not speak, the warmth in his eyes told Mary everything she needed to know, that he remembered her, and that her kindness had mattered. The experience changed Mary's life too. She became more involved in helping other children in the community who faced similar struggles. The diner became a place where people could donate food, clothes, and toys for children in need. Mary helped organize small events to raise awareness about child welfare and the importance of kindness. The helicopter's arrival had been sudden and loud, but what followed was a quiet transformation. The boys' rescue brought the town together in ways no one had imagined. It reminded everyone that even the smallest voices deserve to be heard and protected. Mary often thought about the boy's mother. She hoped she would get better and that one day she could reunite with her son in a safe and loving home. Until then, Mary knew the boy was in good hands and that her role as his quiet protector had helped lead to this new beginning. The town had changed too. People started to pay more attention to the children around them, offering help and kindness without waiting to be asked. Mary's simple act of feeding the mute boy every day had sparked a movement of compassion. The boy's story was far from over. There were many challenges ahead, but with the support of Mary, the community, and the foster family, he had a chance to build a new life. A life filled with safety, love, and the possibility of finding his voice in a world that once seemed so silent. As Mary closed the diner one evening, she looked up at the sky where the helicopters had flown. She smiled softly, knowing that sometimes even the quietest acts can bring about the loudest changes. And sometimes help arrives unexpectedly, like the sound of helicopters, cutting through the stillness to remind us all that no one should be left alone or unheard. After the helicopters left and the boy was safely taken into care, life for both Mary and the boy began to change in ways neither of them could have expected. The boy's world, which had once been so small and silent, began to open up. New people came into his life, doctors, counselors, foster parents, and each of them worked patiently to help him find a way to express himself and heal. At first, the boy was quiet, even more so than before. The change in his environment was confusing and sometimes frightening. The walls of the small house where he had lived with his mother had been familiar, even if difficult. Now, surrounded by strangers and new faces, he felt lost. But the kindness that Mary had shown him, the small, safe space of the diner, stayed in his heart like a soft light guiding him through the dark. The foster parents, a gentle couple named Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins, were unlike anyone the boy had ever met. They did not expect him to speak or act like other children. Instead, they listened carefully to his drawings, the way he pointed to things, and the tiny sounds he made. They filled their home with toys and books that could be touched, heard, and seen. Hoping to give the boy many ways to learn and grow, Mary visited the boy often, bringing familiar things from the diner, the soft teddy bear, some crayons, and notebooks filled with his own drawings. Each visit was a special moment for both of them. The boy's eyes would light up when he saw Mary, and even though he still could not speak, his smiles and hugs said more than words ever could. Mary's heart felt full every time she saw him happy and safe. Meanwhile, the community that had once been quiet about the boy's situation now became actively involved. The story of the mute boy and the kind waitress spread through the town, inspiring people to look out for one another, especially those who were vulnerable or alone. Small groups formed to help families in need, to provide meals, clothes, and school supplies for children who might otherwise go without. Mary, who had always been shy about her role in all this, found herself becoming a leader in these efforts. She organized food drives at the diner, set up donation boxes, and even helped connect families with social services. The diner became a hub for kindness and care, a place where no one felt invisible. For the boy, the next step was school. Teachers were told about his condition, and special plans were made to help him succeed. He was placed in a small classroom with a teacher trained to work with children who had communication difficulties. The boy was nervous at first, unsure of how to fit in. But with patience and support, he slowly began to learn new ways to express himself. He used pictures, gestures, and even a small electronic device that could speak words when he pressed buttons. These tools helped him communicate his needs and feelings, and slowly he started to form connections with other children, though he still didn't speak aloud. The boy's world became richer with new friendships and experiences. Mary watched these changes from a distance, her heart swelling with pride. She knew the boy had faced many challenges, but she also saw his strength and courage. She continued to support him, visiting after school and bringing new crayons and drawing paper. Sometimes they would sit together in the diner, the boy drawing. Quietly, while Mary served coffee and listened, the boy's mother was still sick and unable to care for him. But Mary and the social workers kept her informed. They hoped that one day, if the mother's health improved, she might be reunited with her son in a safe and loving environment. Until then, the boy had a family that cared deeply for him and a community that had opened its heart. As the seasons changed, the boy's confidence grew. He began to draw pictures of his dreams, images of sunny days, open fields, and happy faces. He even started to use his speech device to say simple words like thank you and friend. Each new word was a victory, a step toward finding his voice in a world that had once been silent. Mary often thought about how small acts of kindness had led to these big changes. If she had not taken the time to notice the boy, feed him quietly, and offer him comfort, things might have been very different. She realized that sometimes the smallest actions could have the greatest impact. The community's support also taught Mary an important lesson that no one is truly alone when people care. The diner's walls echoed with stories of hope and healing, reminding everyone that kindness can create a ripple effect, touching lives far beyond what we see. One day, during a special event at the diner organized to raise awareness about children with special needs, the boy surprised everyone. With the help of his speech device, he spoke his first full sentence, "Thank you for helping me." The room fell silent, and then erupted in applause. Mary's eyes filled with tears as she realized that this quiet boy, who had once been invisible, was now being heard. This moment marked a turning point for the boy and the community. It showed that even in the face of silence and difficulty, there is always hope for connection and growth. The boy's journey was far from over, but now he walked it surrounded by love and support. Mary continued to work tirelessly, knowing that there were many more children like the boy who needed help. The story of the mute boy and the waitress, who fed him quietly every day, was now a story of courage, healing, the power of kindness. As the diner's lights dimmed each night, Mary often thought about the boy's smile, the drawings he made, and the quiet strength he carried. She felt grateful to have been a part of his journey and hopeful for the future they would build together. The boy had found his voice, not just through words, but through the love and care that surrounded him. And Mary had found her purpose in quietly feeding not just a boy, but a hope that could never be silenced. The story of the mute boy and the kind waitress reached a new chapter, one filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter future. After months of care, love, and support from Mary, the foster family, and the community, the boys, life began to blossom in ways that no one could have imagined when he first arrived at the diner, silent and alone. One morning, Mary received a call from the foster parents. They told her that the boy had made remarkable progress. He was learning new ways to communicate every day, and even though he still struggled to speak, his confidence was growing. This news filled Mary with joy. She felt that her quiet acts of kindness had helped him find a path toward happiness. Mary decided to visit him again at the foster home. When she arrived, the boy was waiting by the door, his eyes bright and full of excitement. He held the small speech device in his hand, and when Mary came closer, he pressed a button and said, "Hello, Mary." The simple greeting was a moment that touched Mary deeply. It was the first time the boy had spoken her name, and it was a sign that he was opening up to the world around him. As they spent time together, Mary noticed how much the boy had changed. He was more playful, curious, and eager to learn. They spent the afternoon drawing, reading books, and playing games. That helped him express himself. Mary brought his favorite food from the diner, and the boy smiled as he ate. Showing her the happiness that simple moments could bring, the boy's foster parents shared stories of how he had started to trust people more. He was forming friendships at school and learning to use his speech device to say new words and sentences. The progress was slow but steady, and everyone celebrated each small victory. One day, social workers informed Mary that the boy's mother's health had improved, enough for her to begin recovery. There was hope that one day the mother and son could be reunited safely. This news brought a mixture of emotions: joy for the possibility of reunion, but also caution. Everyone wanted to ensure that the boy's safety and well-being would always come first. Mary, the foster parents, and the social workers worked closely to prepare for this possibility. They helped the mother receive medical treatment and counseling. They also provided her with support to improve her living conditions, so that if and when the reunion happened, it would be in a safe and loving environment. Meanwhile, the boy continued to thrive. His confidence grew with every passing day. Speech therapists helped him practice words and sounds, and his teachers adapted lessons to meet his needs. He no longer felt isolated or invisible. The boy had found his voice, and with it, a new sense of belonging. Mary's role in the boy's life remained important. She continued to visit, bringing encouragement and friendship. Their bond, formed through quiet acts of kindness and understanding, had grown into a strong and lasting friendship. Mary felt proud of the boy's achievements and grateful to be part of his journey. The community also played a vital role in the boy's growth. The diner became a place where people gathered to share stories, support one another, and celebrate the power of kindness. Mary organized events to raise awareness about children with special needs, encouraging more people to get involved in helping vulnerable children. As time passed, the boy began to explore new interests and talents, loved drawing and painting, often creating colorful pictures that told stories of his dreams and experiences. Mary kept his artwork safe, displaying some of the best pieces in the diner, where everyone could see them. These drawings became symbols of hope and resilience. One summer, the boy's story caught the attention of a local newspaper. A journalist visited the diner to learn more about Mary and the boy. They wrote a heartfelt article about the power of compassion and how small acts of kindness could change lives. The article inspired many people, and donations and volunteers started to come forward to support children in need. The boy also began to participate in community activities, as art classes and music lessons. These experiences helped him build confidence and skills, and he made new friends who accepted him just as he was. The boy's world was no longer silent or lonely. It was full of sound, color, and laughter. Despite all the progress, Mary never forgot the boy's beginnings, the quiet visits to the diner, the shared meals, and the silent understanding between them. She knew that kindness and patience had been the foundation of his journey. She continued to remind others that everyone has a story, and sometimes the simplest gestures can be the most powerful. The boy's mother eventually recovered enough to be part of his life again. With careful supervision and support, she and the boy began to reconnect. The reunion was emotional and filled with hope for a future where they could heal together. Mary and the foster parents remained involved, providing guidance and love as the family rebuilt their bonds. The boy's life had been full of challenges, but also filled with love, hope, and the support of many caring people. His journey was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of kindness to transform lives. Mary's quiet act of feeding a mute boy every day had grown into something much bigger, a movement of compassion that touched a whole community. The story reminded everyone that sometimes the most important voices are the quiet ones, and that every child deserves to be heard, loved, cared for. As Mary closed the diner one evening, she thought about the boy's smile, his first spoken words, and the bright future ahead. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment and knew that she had made a difference in the world. One small act at a time, the boy, once silent and alone, now had a voice and a future filled with possibilities. And Mary, the waitress who had quietly fed him every day, had shown the world that kindness can change everything.